What's up, world? It's Ryan Banta back at you guys this week. As you guys know, I'm going to be speaking at a number of different conferences this winter, and it kind of prompted me having a little back and forth with a couple of my colleagues about an upcoming conference we're going to have nearby. Kind of had me thinking a lot about my experiences as the Missouri Track and Cross Country Association president, and kind of cutting your teeth on how to manage a big event and what the best ways of doing that are as a manager, and then also as a participant in the clinic. So I've got 5 different thoughts about that, and just a little background on how we do things in Missouri is that you get nominated as one of the vice presidents, and then you spend about 3 years in the vice president role, and then you keep rising until you become the president. And then when you're the president, you're responsible for managing, who comes to the clinic, when and where they speak, and how you set those things up. And in the past, we've had a couple people who've helped us out a lot. Aaron Mosier, who used to be with MF Athletic, and Jamie, who is with Custom Meeting Planners, who have really kind of helped us organize those events and things like that. And I'm pretty proud to say that our Missouri clinic has over 700 people traditionally, which makes it one of the top 5 clinics in the United States for participation in the world of track and field. And, it's a 3-day clinic, usually in the first or second week of December, where we have a Thursday night keynote speaker, all day Friday, and Friday evening sessions. And then we follow it up with Saturday morning sessions, more panels or specific things. So today, the 5 concepts that I'm going to talk about are: first, how do you set up a clinic? How do you do that well? How do you provide multiple perspectives? How do you provide actionable resources? And then the last 2 are more of what you can do as a participant in the clinic, which is pick something you want to improve and run with it. And then finally, ask questions, shake hands, and follow up. So one of the things that I've seen in the brief amount of time that I've been speaking at a number of different clinics around the Midwest, there's consistent things that we see and we expect from clinics, and things that I think are done really well, and some things that, I look at as opportunities for improvement. And setup really has a lot to do with how successful your clinic is going to be or not going to be. And I think one of the things that people forget about is that when you get these positions and you have people that help you out, some people are a little afraid to kind of take the bull by the horns and kind of control the setting. And for example, who do you have speak? When do they speak? And what are they talking about? So one of the biggest errors I see a lot of clinics do, and of course this depends on your size and how you run things, but I think it's really important that you try not to have a lot of crossover of topics. Now, whatever it may be. I'm going to use track and field as an example because that's the easiest one for me to talk about, because it's the one I spend the most time with. But I always see that it's a challenge when we come to these clinics with a lot of people, and they have a lot of presentations and a lot of people coming in and talking, which is great. And it's awesome to have the potpourri of all that. We're going to talk about that in our number 2 point. But I think it's really important that you try to set things up where there isn't a lot of crossover between a common event or a common theme. So if you're going to talk about weight training and the track and field setting, you probably need to just have one weight training session going on for every hour that you have people talking. One of the things that I've ran into individually, and that I've heard from other people, have expressed their frustration, is when we'll have somebody really special come in, talk about an event, and then you also have someone else who's talking about that very same event, but they may not have the name ID. So like if you have an Olympian come in, or a world record holder, or a Division I coach, they're probably going to garner more attention than maybe the high school coach will. And that may be well deserved, but sometimes maybe it's not. Maybe the presentation from a high school coach might be more applicable to most of us as coaches. You avoid doing that if you manage it where you don't have a lot of crossover. So when I ran the Missouri clinic, I was pretty diligent on trying to limit the number of times that happened over the course of the 3 days. And we were pretty good at managing that and making sure that there weren't those crossover events. The other thing that you need to make sure that you're doing and you're looking at when you're looking at this event is you need to have a balance. You need to have a balance of topics discussing culture. You need to have a balance of topics discussing how you manage things. And then finally, X's and O's, and actually having things that are actionable X's and O's, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the reason why you need to do that is that, if you have a coach who is, 35 years in the sport and has won multiple state titles and district championships, they're probably not going to care so much about the X's and O's. They're more looking for those management pieces, those little nuggets of wisdom that they can take back and then, provide their team with or their athletes with, or maybe even just an idea to deal with a difficult situation. Management too, even though a lot of us have been coaching for a while and we've been doing this for a while, kids are changing. And because the athletes we work with and the kids that we work with are changing, we have to come up with new management schemes, how to best, help our athletes achieve their potential, but at the same time, not waste a lot of time dealing with very independent issues that can be handled in more of a general setting. And so I think management plays a major role in things that you probably wouldn't even think of, that lost time in between transitions, just like in a classroom. If you're handing out papers in the middle of class, that's 5 minutes that you're losing, that your students are not going to be engaged in the lesson. So you got to figure out, how do you manage that to limit the amount of downtime that the kids have in between those transitions? And the same thing in the sport of track and field or any other sport, football, where you're changing from offense to defense to special teams, rotating different drills, individual to group drills. There's all sorts of things that we need to kind of know about management. It's really important. And then obviously, finally, the X's and O's. And when we look at X's and O's, again, what are we trying to get for those coaches? Are we trying to service the most advanced coaches who are looking for small percentages of change in their plan? Are we looking to help the coaches that are brand new and basically have never seen a stopwatch or a tape measure before, or even a track and field meet? Well, those are two very different experiences, and I think it's important to service both in a clinic. If you don't do that, then your clinic really isn't matching the expectations that it should. So going on to that, kind of segueing into that, step 2, you need to have multiple perspectives. One of the things that I've recently found is a lot of times when we do these clinics, we're looking at a lot of men, we're looking at a lot of white men, we're looking at a lot of distance coaches, or sprint coaches, and so every clinic has a flavor or a feel. And what I think it's important to own the fact that a sport like track and field or other sports that have multiple positions and a lot of different variety of strengths and weaknesses that come with those positions, you need to own the fact that there needs to be multiple perspectives. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of our novice coaches and our advanced coaches. And when you run a clinic, you need to call it out. You need to say, this is a session for the beginning coach, and this is a session for an advanced coach. My buddy Phil Woolbrink and Aaron Mosier kind of put that together with our Missouri clinic, and I feel like that's really been valuable. Last year, Coach Candrell had us reintroduce that for our program, and I felt like it was really good because it helped guide the coaches so that when they go into a session, they don't feel like they're wasting time hearing somebody talk about, limb length and velocity at, maximum speed and touchdown mechanics and things that they just want to know how to put a workout together, and so you need to make sure that you're facilitating a novice coach in that way. But then more advanced coaches, people who have spent a lot of time researching and being with the sport, they need to be fulfilled also, where they're looking for maybe those smaller percentages of improvement, and you need to have sessions that are for advanced coaches. Another thing that I've found is that a lot of times when we have our reports that come back to us, one of the big complaints is that there isn't enough female coaches presenting. Anytime that you can get a female coach to present at your clinic, that is a bonus. It is a good thing to have done. One of the coolest clinics, and I know I've talked about this on my vlogs before, but in Minnesota they have sessions specifically for women coaches, and they have sessions that are geared towards women coaches alone. And lo and behold, in Minnesota, it was the largest percentage of women coaches that I've ever seen at a clinic. You facilitate those things, you call it. Don't be afraid of those things. Don't be afraid that somebody's going to say, oh, you're a social justice warrior, you're doing this or that. No, hell with that. You need to own it and say, yes, this is something that if we really want to be representative of the athletes and the people we work with, we need to have more people that are involved that look like the athletes in which we coach. So I think that's really important, to have sessions that are specifically for that, and don't be afraid to call those sessions out. Another thing, if you are a state clinic, like the Missouri Track and Cross Country Coaches Association, ours is. You need to make sure that you have coaches from around the state. Don't just have the city coaches and the big school coaches, because yeah, obviously they get a lot of attention because they have the better athletes. They're in a populated area. They have better facilities traditionally. They have access to more athletes and more club programs and things like that. But there are coaches around the state that are doing a really good job. And again, if you want somebody to feel like they're reaching their audience, you've got to have some of those coaches from successful small programs. You need to have coaches not just in one metro area, but try to have them come from a variety of different places. And the more that they can relate to the coach that they're talking to, once you've already established what level we're talking about and what events we're talking about, the better. And I think that those are things that you can do to improve your clinic. Okay. The other thing that we need to think about is we're looking at events. It's hard. I know it's hard to find people that are really good at teaching technical events, but there are plenty of people out there that want those clinicians to come in. So if you have nothing but sprinters or distance runners, and that's all you have in your coaching sessions, you're not doing the service that you need to do. Every clinic needs to have a session or more on every event that is done in track, which means you need to have distance throws, hurdles, sprints, jumps, and they need to have that. And jumps include pole vault. Okay, then you need to have those sessions because some of us coach everything. We don't have the advantage of having multiple assistant coaches, which kind of goes back to the whole idea of management and those type of activities that we need to think about when we're setting up our sessions. The other thing, if you're a person who's speaking at a clinic or you're the one who is setting up the clinic, whoever you have bringing them in, they need to provide not just notes and papers and a PowerPoint. They actually need to provide actionable things that they do in their program that can be used by other coaches. And I know I talk a lot about it all depends, and we want to be careful when we're cutting and pasting programs. And I got a book that provides quite a bit of that. But and I understand the caution of that. But when you go to a clinic, you want to feel like you come away with something actionable. I remember that I was sitting in a session where there was a coach and he was talking for 45 minutes about a single drill that really didn't have a lot of carryover to a high school athlete. And I asked him a question. Okay, coach, that's a good drill for the drive phase. Do you have anything to work on, the transition or maximum velocity or other things? Because I had a feel in the room that people were like, okay, it's time to land your plane and move on. Of course, that coach got very upset. He called me out and had me perform the drill, which I want to tell you, I performed it really well. And I got high fives and everything out. And that was one of my highlights of me kind of showing up a cocky guy. But it takes one to know one. But, you want to be able to provide those things. Don't go out into the weeds in a novice session for the coaches or even in an advanced session. Say, okay, here's something that's really unique to these particular athletes that, 7-step to the first hurdle in the 100 hurdles or the 110s. Okay, what's an actionable drill that we can get athletes there? Hey, you've got a really good sprinter. Here's a drill that really teaches the drive phase very well. There's things you can do, okay, but they need to be actionable. They need to be something that a coach can take and then use in their practice the day they come back. That's how you have valuable clinics. And if you do that, the advantage is you're going to have a lot of people coming back year in and year out wanting to learn more. And you don't have to give them everything, but you also don't have to be like that coach I was just telling you about that had one drill for 45 minutes. You need to be providing multiple resources and actionable items. So when coaches go to this clinic, they know they're getting something out of it. They're excited. They want to come back. They want more. That keeps the camaraderie up. That keeps the coaches returning. And it keeps your event as something that is a big point on the calendar. So every year, the Missouri Track and Cross Country Coaches Association Clinic comes up. That's exciting. To me, that's the start of the holiday season for me. And I know that sounds silly, okay, but it really is. Getting to spend the whole weekend with my buddies is great, but then also getting your juices flowing and excited and having some new ideas that you can add into your program that are actionable is even more exciting. It makes you more pumped up to go and try those things either in winter conditioning or in the first couple of weeks of practice. Now, what can you do as a person who is going to the clinic? Well, if the coaches have provided you at the clinic that they don't have a lot of doubling up, so like let's say you want to learn about the discus or you want to learn about the throws, I would suggest, and I know there might be a coach you want to listen to or an athlete you might want to listen to, but ultimately we're doing this for other people to get them better. So as exciting as it might be to see Dan O'Brien at a clinic and talk to him, you got to ask yourself, well, how applicable is that to learning the javelin? Might not be, right? So it's really important for you to think about, okay, I'm going to set my schedule up and I'm going to crash course the throws. And I'm going to go to every throw session. And why do I want you to do that? The reason why I want you to do that is you're going to be able to start seeing how the dots connect and that certain things in certain throw events carry over to all the throws. And you're going to be able to start piecing together. So if you go to one coach who's talking about like stories and war stories and culture with the throwers, great. And then you might meet another coach who talks about how to implement the weight room. And then you talk to another coach that shows you how to approach the javelin, you know, and you start to all of a sudden see, oh, okay, I see how these schemes can go together. And I can see how I can fit on Monday, we're going to do discus. On Tuesday, we'll do shot. On Wednesday, we'll do javelin, you know, and then I'm going to fit my weight room in here. And then we can do all of these drills on these days to warm up. And you can start to piece these things together. And you don't have to take it from me. Take it from John Wooden. John Wooden would do that every year. Every year he'd say, all right, I suck at this. Let me contact the best coaches in the United States at this particular discipline when it comes to basketball. And I'm going to do a crash course and learn as much as I possibly can. Because I'm John Wooden, people are going to want to share and exchange ideas with me. Now, I know most of us out there aren't John Wooden, okay? But you have a friend circle, you have a coaches circle. There are people out there you respect that can help you. And the best way to introduce that is in the setting of a coach's clinic because it's not awkward. That's what you're there to do, which brings me to point number 5. If you're going to a clinic, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask the question, especially when that time is set up in the presentation to do so. It's nice to have that one-on-one conversation with the coach, which is great because that's going to help you, but it might not help the 50 other coaches in the room that want clarity on something just like you do. Or maybe they were really wondering about that. They had a question or they were like, I don't know, because I have this situation. That might not be applicable to my program. And then by asking the coach that question, they can address it and maybe give you a way to work around that situation with that style of training or method or organization of practice. And now you've not just helped yourself, you've helped everyone else in the room. And I know how we are when it comes to meetings and professional development. You don't want to be the teacher, be like, excuse me. Of course, but that isn't this type of situation. You're going here because you're passionate about what you do, you're excited to learn, and you want to help people become better to meet their potential. Ask the question. Second thing, then go up after the session, introduce yourself in a more formal capacity, and shake their hand and thank them for coming. Because oftentimes the money they get is not that much money to speak. It basically pays for either your hotel room or your gas or whatever. So most of the time when people present and they do these things at clinics or they do the USATF schools or whatever, they're not making money off of that. They're doing it because they're passionate about the sport just like you are. So shake the hand, thank them, make the connection. And then don't let it just die right there on the vine. Then you follow up the next week. You thank them again and you reach out and you say, hey, here's my number, here's my email, here's my variety of social medias. Let's get together and let's have a coffee sometime. Let's talk. One of the best things that I've ever been told by somebody who I really don't have much of a relationship with because I just don't interact with them all that much, but Aeneas Williams' kid went to Parkway Central for a while. And one of the things he told me about how to be the Hall of Famer that he ended up becoming is that he contacted all the very best people that played his position in the history of the NFL. and they said, I want to buy you a coffee and I want to talk. Now, you're probably not going to get the guy who's active, who's still playing, that's going to help you out necessarily. But in the world of track and field, we're willing to share. It's great. We're so much more open than other people are. So reaching out to those people and saying, hey, can I stop by? Can I watch a practice? Can I buy you dinner? Can we hang out? Can I have a phone call? More often than not, that coach is going to say absolutely, because they're just excited and humbled that you would even consider what they have to say of any kind of value at all. I know that I get that excitement and that jazzy feeling every time I'm asked. Now, I have 2 girls and I have a limited amount of time, and I teach a full schedule of courses at my school, and I'm working on my master's, right? But I'll still make time for you. We could still set things up. So don't be afraid of anybody to ask them, because that's built the best opportunities I've ever had. I read this guy, Mike Hurst, who's from Australia, who's the Australian record holder in the 1980s. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I want to ask you some questions about this current system. Will you help me out? Hey, Clyde Hart, you sit down and talk to me about speed endurance. Sure. Hey, Dr. Daniels, you've got the most famous running book ever put together and it's sold over 250,000 copies. Will you spend an hour with me to talk about how I'm supposed to balance training between my 2 really good distance runners? Can I talk to me for an hour and a half? So don't be afraid to do that. Your job at the clinic is to make yourself a better coach. And you won't make yourself a better coach if you don't improve the circle of coaches that you interact with. You never know what could come out of it. Coach Carey and Coach Davis and Coach Ski, these really good coaches, and Dale Shepard from the St. Louis area, they used to get together and have luncheons all the time. They get together at the bar and they just talk shop. And so recently I was approached by a coach who wanted me to be a participant in that same thing. So guess what? I'm going to do that. I hope we get together at least once a month, if not more, to talk about things and to deal with problems. Because what you're going to find out is we all have a lot of the same stuff and a lot of the same issues. But how we deal with it might be very different. And that will provide you opportunities in your toolkit to improve. Now, a couple things we got to talk about. Big thing coming down the pipe. My buddy and I, Coach Gozy, and I are coming up with a online coaches school. And we have an opportunity for some of you guys to join us in a joint venture with that. If you want to be a participant in that and make some money being involved in a program that's really good and an online school that will help all athletes, not just track and field athletes, please hit me up. You know where to get me on my social medias. You know where to get me on Facebook. And I will be reaching out to a number of you to participate in that and share the details with you. That's coming in November. And we'll have a big promotional push on that coming up soon. Also behind me, the Sprinters Compendium is still on sale. And if you come to any of my clinics where I talk, that book will be sold at a reduced cost at $10 off and no shipping, because I will have books on hand at the Missouri Track and Cross Country Coaches Clinic, at the Illinois Coaches Clinic, and at the Central California Clinic, which I'll be speaking at, both of those in January. So I hope you found this to be informative and thought-provoking about when you put clinics together and what you're wanting to do. We've got a lot of good examples of people out there putting together some of these sessions. Don't be afraid to ask these coaches and think about how you plan things out, crossover, multiple perspectives for gender, multiple perspectives for sport, management, X's and O's, culture, and then having actionable things at the clinic for your coaches to take home with them. All right, guys, thank you. Please leave your comments below. Don't be afraid to share the video. I should be hitting up again somewhere later on this week because I owe the Masters athletes a video for the questions they've asked me to. Have a great day, guys. Love you.